Hi, and welcome to Best in Tesla, where today we're going to do a little interview, or more maybe like a Tesla talk show, because I have invited two German guests today that knows a lot about the German car industry, and of course Tesla, and of course both a German, so they have a good perspective of the whole European auto market and the whole shift to EVs. And so we're going to talk a little bit about, can they keep up with Tesla? Why is Tesla actually beating them right now as a best-selling EV brand in Europe? And are the Chinese actually going to be a big threat to them? And why are Volkswagen shutting down production in some of their factories? So much to talk about. So let's check it all out and let's dive right in. So let's invite the two the Germans in here, two legend in the Tesla community. This is Jan from TeslaFix, who has a YouTube channel that does really great interviews, and Alex Voigt, a blogger and writer with more than 100,000 followers on X. One of them called Elon Musk. Welcome to the channel, guys, and thank you so much for taking the time.
Yeah,
thank you very much. For my pleasure too.
Yeah, Jan, we have been talking back and forth a couple of times on your channel, and you have also been on Best in Tesla News a couple of times, reporting from Germany. And Alex, this is the first time we actually meet in person.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, happy to be here and share my point of view, which is possibly not that much different from Jan's, I guess. I don't know. We will see. But it's nice to chat in a group of three. So yeah, let's dive into it.
Yeah. Well, I would like to start by asking you, Alex, because a couple of weeks back, I can't remember when, but you tweeted that you had a Volkswagen manager that you took on a drive in your Plaid Model S, and he has never driven a BEV before. If you can talk about that, how did that go, and what was his reaction to a BEV and a Tesla Plaid Model S?
Yeah, I think I can talk a little bit about it, but if you know me, you know that I'm very, very sensitive in terms of protecting people who are feeding information. I do not have any approval from him, but this is just generic here. So yeah, I mean, he's a designer within the VW group, actually with VW. A really nice chap, by the way. So I really enjoyed the time I had with him. And it was interesting for me to learn a little bit about his perspective. So first of all, he's been totally blown away driving. Well, actually, it's not a surprise because I drive the Model S Plaid. So everybody's in there is blown away simply because it's a crazy car that is, acceleration is beyond what people can imagine. Even on my side, I just can't believe what this car is doing sometimes, not on the bad sense, on the positive side. So he was very, very positively impressed about the drive. He was a good driver. So we went on the Autobahn. He really tested the vehicle quite a bit. And that was great, I think. But indeed, I've been, asking him, I think twice or so, if it's really true that this is the first time that he drove a BEV, because I was under the impression that if you have a little bit of responsibility within the VW group, whatever it is, you should at least have driven your own cars. But even better, if you've been driving cars from the competition. And obviously, as Tesla is leading, you must drive a Tesla. It doesn't need to be Model S Plaid, but you should know against what you are competing. And he was impressed. He was very impressed. And he checked out the car. I showed him also, the cargo space and the frunk and you name it, just a little bit from all and everything. Obviously, as I usually can't stop talking, I told him a little bit about the car and Tesla and service. And the interesting reaction, and I think in the beginning, he started to talk about it before I even have asked question, was that he indicated what I've been hearing already, that VW is going into a design direction of kind of almost vintage. So they are trying to populate the, fantastic cars, the iconic cars from the past, like the Golf or the VW or the Bus or you name it, which have been selling in the millions, sometimes tens of millions. And they've been trying to bring battery electric vehicles into this design language, which is something I've heard before from just media and rumors and here and there. So that was interesting. Actually, he is an ICE designer, so he's not a designer for battery electric vehicles, to defend him a little bit. But still, I believe it's important to drive a battery electric vehicle, because sooner or later, he will be in the role to design battery electric vehicles anyway. And he was kind of saying, for instance, the ID. Bus he likes very much, which I agree with. It's a great looking bus, a small one. It doesn't have the utility factor I believe it should have in terms of space and other things. He was critical about the back seat, which you can't obviously, make flat, and a couple of other things, and we chatted here and there a little bit, but I've heard from him what I hear from other VW sources, which is not really a denial that they have a hard time, but a little bit not understanding how severe the situation is, I would say. Which I believe is a little bit the bubble these people are in. If you're in such a huge organization, even if you talk privately to friends, it's still the bubble, And I think the information, the outside information, which, and to be clear, we are here in a bubble too, right? The three of us.
Yeah.
But it's good that bubbles talk to each other, right? That's my impression, or that's my belief. And this is just not really, I believe, not the case within VW.
Yeah, and it is like we see the GTI version that is coming out is going to be very much designed in the same design language as the ICE GTI, as you're talking about. Is that correctly?
Yeah. That's what I wanted to add as well, because Alex, you've mentioned now that they want to, or they went with the old or the vintage design language, but now you could see that the ID.3 sales were plummeting, the ID.4 sales aren't as bright as they thought, and also the ID. Bus actually also had problems from the get-go, which was surprising because it was adapted at first, but when the production numbers ramped up, it suddenly stopped to sell. And we've also heard that in China, they also had problems selling their vehicles, of course. And famously, the VW group CEO said the roof is on fire. We've heard about this news a few months ago, or 1 month ago, around that time period. And yeah, now they are shifting with their GTI version of the VW Golf to the electric version, not the Golf. But they go back to the design language of the Golf, the GTI Golf. And I think this is a much better move for their customer base, in my opinion, because I mean the first iteration, especially of the ID.3, was it didn't look good. In my opinion, as a designer as well, I think the ID.4 is kind of okay ish from the design perspective. I've seen it in person they have huge wheels. The wheelbase is pretty broad. It looks very bulky and aggressive as well, but I think just sticking with a changed version of their old design is a much better approach for their customer base. I think their own customer base would adapt it more easily that way, because the Golf was so iconic for years. So I think this was a good move in terms for the hardcore fans, in my opinion. But I don't know if this will work in the broader market. That's a total different story. Yeah,
I think. Just sorry, last to sneak in here. I'm very much critical about the situation, because VW's new CEO Blume came in and he stopped a lot of projects, which is another topic we can discuss. But then he stopped all the design from the old ID.3 line, ID line actually, which is a very natural behavior from new CEOs coming into a company. So all the blame goes to the guy who was fired, And I've
Yeah.
been critical about Herbert Diess, right? So just don't get me wrong here. I think he made a lot of mistakes, but he also made a couple of really good things. However, in any case, VW invested a lot of money into the ID product line and in marketing and PR and all of that. And now the new guy is coming in and kind of saying, oh, the guy there that's out there in the back door, Herbert Diess, he's his fault. He made everything wrong, including design. So let's start new design. And VW has a long history of CEOs messing up with design from VW. I mean, this goes back to every CEO can imagine within VW. They've been kind of teasing and arguing with designers how vehicles should look like. And the GTI you just mentioned, Jan, not sure if you've seen it on the IAA here, the exhibition in Munich.
Sadly, not, but
I've seen it in
pictures and
person.
videos.
I've seen it in person. I didn't dive very deep into it for a very specific reason, because this is a concept car. I'm not even sure if there's a battery in, to be honest. So, and the downside I see with this design move is you are using an old design and you're trying to squeeze a battery electric drivetrain in with all and everything. So you do exactly what you should not do. You should design the vehicle around the software and the battery, and then you obviously it needs to have characteristics of a battery electric vehicle with wind resistant and other things. But just thinking that because they've been selling a lot of GTIs in the past and all the other models, they just take them and then all of a sudden customers going to be happy is just not what I believe is going to be successful.
No, and also think like in China, they are much more aggressive and much more futuristic looking cars, in my opinion. So to taking the design back a notch to the old ways, I don't think that's going to go very well in China, at least. It could be a good idea for the European market, I'm not sure. But I think in China, it could be trouble for them because they like bling bling in China. They like something that is futuristic and stuff like that, and they come out with something that looks like the old Polo and the old Golf, like the
Absolutely.
ID to all.
So
it looks like a small.
Interesting. The designer I talked to, he was just lately in China, so he was sent over to China, and what he said to me is that the requirements and expectations from Chinese customers are extremely different from what we know here from Europe. So he talked, I think, about scent in the driver cabin that is evaporating automatically and strange stuff like you mentioned the lightning. There may be some exaggerations, I don't know. But at the end of the day, what I hear about China is that they are very techie savvy guys. So, and that means we talk about software. And each PR or marketing or whatever I read about VW in the last half a year is not about software. The only thing I've read the latest was that Blume has fired the entire CARIAD software management team and hired people who are famous for reorganization. And if I hear that from Blume, then I immediately think about he's a finance guy. So he wants to twist the numbers, bring the costs down to have a good, good profit number at the end of the day and boosting his bonus. So I just miss the focus on software, to make a long story short.
Yeah, definitely. I also have that as a question here because software is kind of, in my opinion, starting to become the new luxury of the electric vehicles. And we also see like brand loyalty in the first 4 months of 2023. Everyone was down in brand loyalty except Tesla, that had 68% returning of their customers. So that was really good to see. But for me, it also kind of signals that people are preferring maybe tech luxury over the old school German luxury of very well-built cars. They have to be well-built, of course, but the interior, the feel of the car, the feel of the cockpit and all of this. Is this something you believe is a thing that we're seeing people switch over to more tech-savvy customers like we see in China, but also here in Europe, that they want to have that tech inside of their electric vehicles?
maybe I can jump in here for 1 second, if you mind. In my opinion, this is one of the most critical parts. Alex might be also on this camp as well. We've talked about this on my channel as well. Is that the software problematic is such a huge deal. I think the German customer base really looks also onto the panel gaps, every detail of the car, more or less. But you have to remember, even the German car manufacturers started to cheap out in their interior. For example, the ID3, for example, the first iteration was totally out of plastic. It was cheap and everything. And now with the Model 3 refresh that we've seen, they've every surface you can see in the car and touch and feel is actually it has skin to it. I'm not sure how it's called. So it's out of velour or different materials. So no plastic at all. So even if you look into the cup holders on the left side of the left door, even this is with kind of fur. So if you put something there, it doesn't crackle around when you drive, for example, and stuff like this is now changing. I mean, Tesla starts to implement those quality things learned by the Chinese customer base, what they want. So they changed that, and now they get more and more premium in that segment. And if you compare it to the German cars, even Mercedes, for example, which is really much the highest one of the luxury segment that everybody in the US says, oh, let's talk. Oh, Mercedes is the biggest luxurious sedan you can get or something. But actually, even there, it's a lot of plastic inside. And if you rattle on things, it isn't as sturdy as you think. So I think that if that's the only argument that German legacy car manufacturers have, and they have razor thin margins already, they're gonna still cheap out in the interior and don't improve that, and then they don't have any argument anymore, and then that's a huge deal. I think that's a huge danger. And sorry, if you release the EQS in 2020, it was or 2021, they had a Galaxy Tab 5 from 2012 in the back. For controlling the car. And I get the point. They want to have a custom device and a custom software and everything, but you can't compare it to Tesla. It's such a leap. It's like comparing an old Nokia phone to an iPhone, for example, in my opinion. And I also see that software is the new luxury, as you said. I mean, if your car picks you up by itself, is this luxurious? In my opinion, yes. So yeah, I totally agree with that. So I'm going to be quiet now, but you can go on, please. Yeah.
What are your thoughts, Alex?
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I think if we divide the customer base into the more, tech-savvy, techie guys, I would adjust the three of us to that group. You have kind of that what is called the early movers, if you talk about BEVs, which just jump into something new and they learned to love it in seconds. And they are never looking back or even going back. There's no one walking back who's been driving really a Tesla. And then you have kind of almost my generation, a boomer generation, old chaps and women who are looking at panel gaps, who are just liking to have this leather two-ditch, luxury within the car. And when they go to a car exhibition and they sit in, they compare the design and how it feels sitting inside. So some people just for taste reasons dislike Tesla. It's so minimalistic. You just don't have this luxury. And you're right, Jan. Tesla was upgrading this incredibly, also with the new Model 3 Plus. So that's much better. And it feels to me like VW is feeling like on the tech part, they just can't compete. So I've been almost giving in for that. Next generation, new platform 2029. So what are we doing in the next 6 years? So let's at least take the argument away, which is totally correct, Jan, that the ID3 was made out of a lot of plastic. They wanted to bring the cost down, still to create some profit. They probably thought that customers will love the technology and not that much the interior, not that much looking into it. So what I'm trying to say is there are different segments of customers, and the people who are more looking for that, what usually is considered German quality and luxury in terms of vehicles, they want to please at least these guys so that they hope they can still sell cars. And we all know there are a lot of people who've been driving ID3 and believe they've been driving a battery electric vehicle, which I would argue against, because that car is falling, short on so many levels that I would say without driving other brands, and one of them certainly Tesla, you just don't understand what a BEV is about. And I think this is so critical. There's a fight going out there in terms of truth, in terms of ICE and battery electric vehicles. And that fight is leading to most of the arguments the three of us or other people are having with someone who has never been driven in a BEV. It's almost impossible to explain how it feels, isn't it? So that's why I'm always saying, sit in my car, drive it, and then we can talk. But before, it's just pointless,
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's actually a good point, because I also think that people that doesn't try anything else but just get into the ID3 or the ID4, whatever, they will still feel like, wow, this is a really like futuristic car, because when I hit the pedal, it goes. Not as a Tesla, but they don't know, because they just feels like, oh, quick acceleration, and there's a touch screens and stuff like that, and there's very, very quiet compared to an ICE engine, of course. So for people that haven't tried anything else, it will feel kind of like, wow, this is a new great thing. Except if they have also test driven something like a Tesla, it will not feel like the future. It will feel like an old school ICE vehicle just made electric, and not this software platform they build on. And I think like the refreshed Model 3, I think you're really on par here, that saying that the German automakers have maybe gone a little bit down in material choice on EVs because they're losing money on them. And now Tesla is actually trying to up their game and come in with much better luxurious materials inside the car, and have a screen in the back, ventilated seats and stuff like that. Even the BMW i4 doesn't have that. As far as I can see, I can't find a version where you can get ventilated seats for that car. So I think Tesla is really bringing up their A game now with this refreshed model, and the Germans have a hard time keeping up. But do you think that the Germans within the next, doesn't have to be Volkswagen, it could be BMW or Mercedes. Mercedes have always been like the brand you look for the newest technology back in the days with the driver assist features and stuff like that. But do you think some of the German car automakers can come up with an operating system like we see with Tesla, that has an operating system where they can make over-the-air updates very easy? Because right now, as Jim Farley, Ford CEO, said, Ford has 150 software suppliers to bring software to the cars. Do you see the Germans coming out with a operating system of their own within the next 5-6 years?
Sorry that I have to laugh, but even if when you start to ask the question, it's hard for me to stay serious, because I've seen time and time and time and time again that software development in Germany, especially in those established bigger companies, doesn't actually work pretty much. I've worked in the medical field also a long time, and it was about the telematic infrastructure, changing everything, making everything digital in the space of the doctors and drugstores and everything, and it was a disaster. But this was from the German state, so okay. But overall, if you look at it, I mean, we had a bad situation. I'm always pointing out to that point, and I think this was a critical point. It was a point in the 90s that Germany really did bad choices, that we had a huge brain drain here, and it was when all the startups started here in Germany. The German government immediately stepped in and said, "Oh, how can we take taxes from everything we are doing here? Oh, it's software, but how? Yeah." And they made rules and rules and rules, and they made so many rules that many people said, "Okay, we are developing new stuff here that we are not knowing actually if this works out, if we're gonna make money anyway. But now we already get taxed right away," and many of them fled to the United States in that sense and started their companies in the Silicon Valley. And this, I think, this is an impact that we still feel today. And yeah, I think the US is totally different structured for software development. It's also like China, for example. China has the government behind, and they're gonna push it out, copy. They just copy everything, which was actually a good move in the software space. Actually, they copied the American brands and shielded their market at the same time, so they could, develop their own platforms there, and just copied the American platforms actually. But this worked out pretty well, and now we have the situation that Germany is so helpless in the software segment that they ask China and Huawei, for example, to help. But now we have a different situation, which we probably will talk about also, about the Chinese companies and regulating those in Germany. It's a special situation right now. But so my point is, what I wanted to make is our laws and everything is a little bit difficult for software companies here. And the US has a much more open market there. That's why many apps are developed from the US. And also, for example, China also does a great job there with their software. You can see it in the cars, and I see it as there's so many roadblocks that I think it's pretty difficult to get to that level of Tesla or to the level of the Chinese manufacturers, in my opinion. But yeah, maybe Alex also has an opinion on that.
Yeah, I agree to all what you've been saying in terms of brain drain and software development. Fleeing, nice wording, to Silicon Valley. But back to your question, Lars, does anybody of the German automakers have an operating system that's comparable to that what Tesla is today? Frankly said, I haven't seen any. Maybe there's something in a secret room developed that I don't know yet. I see that they put a lot of marketing dollars out to create a different impression. But if I listen to people who are driving the brands, I do get a lot of negative feedback and very few positive feedback. So what I do is, when I look at German automakers and other automakers, I'm always looking at what do they have today. I never look at what they promise to have one day. So the same is actually true for vehicles. I look at the battery electric vehicles they have on sale today. I just totally ignore everything else, which is why you usually don't see me on auto shows. I've been here in Munich because I live in Munich, so that was kind of unavoidable to step in there. But in terms of operating systems, I've been 4 or 5 years ago when VW tried to develop a good system. I've been looking at what they've been doing right now. What kind of people are they hiring? What kind of organizations they are putting in place with what kind of management to lift this off? And we all know it's 10 to 15,000 IT and software people they've been promoting to have, while we all know there's the entire software team. I think in terms of full self-driving, autopilot is about 300 people within Tesla. And everybody working in software, like Jan and myself, not sure about your Lars, knows that a small agile team is worth way more than 1,000 developers. So I looked at the situation back then and I realized VW will not make it. We won't see a system that works in 4 to 5 years. People didn't believe me because how should I know? And my answer was just, I look at how they build organizations, because out of organizations, fantastic, results coming out of that if you put the right people together. And let's do the same thing today. If we look today, what kind of software people are attracted from the German automakers, and what kind of environment, organization, what kind of freedom they have, how are they located within the hierarchy of the OEM organizations? What kind of suppliers do they have? And Jan, you mentioned that still develop software. What kind of IT architecture in terms of hardware do they have in their cars? And if I add all of this together, I just don't see how anybody will be able, and this is important, to accelerate their innovation that they can catch up with Tesla that is anyway accelerating. So it's like you are competing against a company that is constantly accelerating the innovation and software and data collection. So how the heck can you catch up with that? You need to be faster than they are, right? So show me anybody who's faster than Tesla, and I don't see a German. I mean, they are just very low on that ranking list. I see rather a few of the Chinese, which are more agile and I think understand software way better, to be able at least to stay in, inside of Tesla. They still can see them there. I see the backlights, but VW, and the others, I mean, I just don't see that. And I don't care about PR talk. I totally disregard marketing. I couldn't care less about what the management is trying to tell us. I'm only believing what I see, what they have today, and what measurements they put in place today. And if I look at that, I just don't see that anybody of them will be able to catch up. Actually, I don't even believe that they will keep the distance. I see them falling further behind in that race. And now we are talking about an existential threat for the German automotive industry here. And this is going around in Germany. I mean, Jan, you can confirm that. If you open the news about German automakers, you hear more and more people are really being extremely concerned about the future of Germany and the society as such.
Finally, after tens of decades.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and I wanted to add something. I mean, if you also look over the pond again to the US, Ford, Jim Farley had this great interview with Electrified, was it? I'm not sure, but I think it was Electrified. Yeah, and he
fully charged. Maybe.
Yeah, fully charged. Sorry, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Electrified. Sorry. Yeah, it was fully charged, exactly. And in this interview, I think it was so great to see, have a glimpse into the auto industry from the back door more. Because now we've seen a CEO openly telling everybody, which was probably one of the best things Jim Farley could do, because he has to talk about the things that also his workers and everybody is aware. Wait a second, yes, here is something wrong, and even the CEO talks about this. This is an extremely important sign, which will never happen in Germany. And if it happens in Germany, the CEO is replaced, and that's what we saw with VW, exactly. And now, if you look at the software of Ford as well, it's the same story. They have a lot of suppliers for the motors of the seat, for the adjustments in the car there and left and right and everything. And then they also have like the navigation system is from a different supplier, because they approached the software side just as the hardware side, which is catastrophic. You cannot go in there and say, oh, we're going to outsource this, outsource that. We're just a brand, put everything together and sell the car. It's easy on paper, but it's pretty difficult to develop a really compelling product for the customer. And Tesla isn't actually founded like a car company. It's more of founded like a software company. Silicon Valley startup software company that has design thinking ideation methods in their playbook that they use. They iterate and iterate, get user feedback, and that's how you develop software. You don't develop software by we have this and that hardware and this thing, and now we have to build the software around our hardware. No, that's not how it works. You ask the user how the thing works, and then you iterate and iterate and iterate. You grind it through until it's perfect for the customer. And that's what Tesla is doing more and more. And you can really see is the usability. You just look at the usability, and yeah, that's just what I wanted to add here. I mean, yeah.
You can also describe it with the vertical integration. So because Herbert Diess wanted to develop 90% of the software in-house. A few years later, there was a huge kind of how to do that. And then they said, yeah, we have 10,000 people can do this. Okay. So a few years later, they realized it's not so easy. So he adjusted the objective, I think, to 60%, which sounded for some people more realistic. But the problem is, and Jan started to describe that, you have, I mean, VW Group has 30,000 suppliers. Just imagine the number. These people needs to be managed, and the companies need to be managed, and they have all their core competence. Don't believe they are stupid, and they need to earn their money too, right? So they're developing software for the controllers and for everything, for different functions in the vehicle. So how to insource that within a few years? You won't be able to do this even in 10 or 20 years, to be honest. This is just so massive. The knowledge you need to build in-house is just crazy. And that's why my hopes for VW to manage that has been very low. So what are we seeing right now is there was a huge frustration within VW Group. They couldn't come up with a solution for the demands from Herbert Diess. So they've been kind of bumping their heads. A lot of people have been fired. Don't believe Herbert Diess was a friendly guy. He fired people like Elon, just like that, in a meeting. So people just been frustrated because they didn't know how to manage that. And I understand why, because it's the impossible task. And Herbert Diess was so far away from the operational level that he didn't have actually a clue, I believe, what he's asking for in terms of how the company should change and shift. Everybody's applauding him, and I think he has the right vision, but he couldn't implement it. So organizations have been frustrated. Stakeholders have been frustrated because sales numbers didn't match up. No wonder he was fired, and they put a new CEO in who's now playing like, well, we still can sell ICE. Of course, BEVs will be the future. But, at the moment, there's, customers don't like BEVs anymore.
E-fuels, yeah.
This is because the incentives in Germany went down, and we can do a little bit with e-fuels, which is important too, and all of this crap. So now the organization is happy. They love Oliver. He's great. They all love to go out with a beer with him. He's a nice guy. He's playing to the rules. The culture is intact again, and there's no change in the company. So ask me now again if VW will make it. It's a worse situation than before with Herbert Diess, who was really a very, pain in the ass guy in terms of changing the organization. Now they have Oliver Blume. Everybody loves him. Everything is great, except nothing is great. And in a few years, actually already today, they pay the price for it. And I hear so many excuses why they don't sell BEVs. It's just I'm running out of space to write all of them down. It's
Every other day there's something new from Alex on Twitter or X about Oliver Bloom says this.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, they have a lot of great ideas, but nothing of that is true. It's never their fault. Maybe if you just look at what they're writing, they never argue about their own organization or that something went wrong or the design was not good. Well, they said the old guy, he was responsible for the bad design. This is why they didn't sell the BEVs, which is stupid because at the end of the day, I believe if you have great software, even if it's a bad designed vehicle, at the end of the day, you will sell it. And we don't see this happening this very much. And now the next part is obviously the amount of Chinese automakers being present at the IAA in Munich at the exhibition, the auto exhibition. I think they tripled compared to last time. I've seen the BYD booth, which was huge. I've counted, I think, 13 or 14 different vehicles. This was more than VW had on their booth. So I've seen a lot of funny things. For instance, when I went to Renault, they had 4 cars, and it took me 5 minutes to realize none of them have been a BEV. They've been all hybrids, and they've been marketing them. They've been marketing them as we are great in electric and blah blah blah. So, what's happening here is just this is a big show to give consumers the impression that German and European automakers are making it, and yes, it's difficult, but they are developing. I don't see that. Really, I don't see that. And I hope I'm wrong, obviously for selfish reasons, but I don't see them developing in the right direction simply because they are not honest. And you said this, Jan, which is totally right. Actually, what Jim said was said years before. I've been actually writing articles years before about the decentralized and the software problems they have, and Jim brought it to in an interview, and I'm grateful that he made that because a lot of people are listening to him. But if you want to be better and transform as an organization, you need to look into your own mirror. And this is sometimes really an ugly face that you see on the other side. But if you do not acknowledge what you see and try to change it, you will never succeed. And this is so important. That step is critical for all and everything. And I just don't see it happen. BMW is claiming they have fantastic order inflow and their cars are selling like, hot cake. And Mercedes-Benz is claiming they are the only one who have level 4 autonomous driving vehicles and brakes in one parking, house in Germany. VW is claiming, the customers have a little bit of dip in terms of battery electric vehicles because, the all early movers, the board, but at the end of the day, it's not going that fast and see the change that is required.
Yeah, like you also said, like you don't look into the future because, like we saw in Munich, there was also a lot of concept cars, and we have seen this so many times that I can't get excited about it anymore because we have seen so many concept cars that never come true, and when they finally come true, it's something completely different looking. So what we can look at is what's happening today, as you also say, Alex, and what is happening today with Volkswagen is a bit troubling if all the things I am reading in the headlines is true, like they are cutting employees at the Zwickau factory, and also it sounds like they are shutting down the production in Dresden altogether. Is this true? And that is where the ID3 is also made, right?
So, not sure, Jan, if you want to sneak in, you probably are informed as well. So, Zwickau, there have been rumors that 2,500 people, temporary workers, which worked for VW Group, are going to go. So first of all, it's totally normal for the German auto industry to have temporary workers. They have normal contracts. They do the same job as all the other people. It's just easier to fire them. So they hold them as a flexible force that they can easily let go because the unions otherwise would never allow that VW is firing anybody, right? And if you have to pay them a salary of a year or two, and it takes you a very long time to get them off the payroll. So therefore,
just wanted to add something there. Sorry, just for context, in Germany, we have so strict labor laws that the consequences of those strict labor laws were that they've implemented this system that you could hire people with different contractors working, outsource those contractors more or less. They don't really work directly for VW. They're just contractors. And that's in the whole German economy. So you could say, oh, look, the wages are good. Everybody's happy. But in reality, we have a lot of low wage workers also working our factories with those special conditions. They're going to be fired, and often they are from outside of Germany, of course. Yeah. I just wanted to add that as context. Yeah.
So for VW, they have, in terms of battery electric vehicles, the biggest plant is actually, I believe, in Zwickau. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jan. And Emden, I think, is the second one where they are accelerating the output. And Dresden is actually more a small showcase production for luxury vehicles. In the old days, 20 years ago, it was kind of put in for customers who pay 100K for a vehicle, and then they have a nice day in Dresden. They can look at their own vehicle while it is built there, kind of, and then they get it in their hands at the end of the production line. So this kind of thing they've developed there. So they just, in Dresden, they never had huge output. I just forgot last year how much they've been building, but it's not crazy. So there are only a few hundred people employed there in Dresden. So, and the rumor is, and this is not denied by VW, so therefore I believe it's correct, and the rumor is coming now from several sources within VW, that this is going to be shut down altogether. They are giving these people some roles somewhere in the organization for the reason just explained by Jan. You can't fire them, so they have to find some work for them. And this is a huge company, so they are going to find, some job for them somewhere. But Dresden, as it sounds, going to be closed altogether. Zwickau, which is, and Jan, you're probably looking this up. Zwickau is a rather large production site. There was a rumor that 2,500 temporary workers are on the line. And 10% of them, actually 269, have been announced to be fired last week. So that is now officially confirmed. And given how the situation continues with the order inflow, we're going to see more people leaving silently through the back door. So don't expect...
I have an interesting number for Zwickau here. I have to add it here. More than 2,000 people work at the factory on a fixed-term contract out of about 10,700 employees total, according to DPA.
So you mean on fixed? You mean temporary workers, 2,000?
Yeah, it's 8,700 temporary workers and 2,000 fixed workers.
Oh, that's crazy. I didn't know that.
And if they cut jobs, of course, the temporary workers are.
It's a loophole. I mean, it's a loophole
absolutely.
they are using extensively. And the other point of interest to know here is, I think it was until August the 30th, if I'm not mistaken, that you got an incentive from the government if you didn't fire people. So you could send them home, and the government paid almost the entire salary of that person. This was used by the German automotive industry big time, because when we had COVID and later on the issues with supply, and they couldn't, produce the vehicles, and they had the orders and they had the facilities, but they just didn't have the supplies to build the cars, and customers have been waiting very long. So what have they done? They've been saying, okay, we have to set the prices up for the cars 10 or 20% more, because we have challenges with the supply chain, and we have all the costs, which actually they didn't, because they've been sending people home. It cost them almost nothing because the government paid them, and they had the higher profit at the end of the day. This is why you've seen record profits of the German automotive industry, and everybody in Germany was yelling, hooray, our automotive industry is doing fantastic in Germany.
Yeah,
and
on the back of the taxpayer, of course.
Exactly. And Jan and me was like, it can't be true. Something is wrong here. How come they don't see the obvious, right? And one day they will need to pay the debt, and this day is coming closer and closer. And I think it stopped the end of August, or end of September, one of those two. I don't know exactly.
I don't also know for sure.
Yeah.
But speaking of debt, you also tweeted, Alex, about Volkswagen having over $400 billion in debt as of now. And Germany is a very big country and a very rich country. But is Volkswagen still just too big to fail, or are they getting too big to bail out? Or how big of an issue is it if Volkswagen really go bankrupt and have to be bailed out by the German government?
So first of all, it needs to be said, actually on paper, it's 560 billion, not 400 billion. But this is just on paper because at the end of the day, a large portion of that debt is covered by the vehicles out there, which are kind of leased to customers. So they have value driving out there that they still own. And the problem starts when these cars are just not getting the resales value they calculated in the past. But still, if you deduct all of that, there's a huge load of debt out there, which is refinanced by the German government, Lower Saxony in Germany, as well as the EZB, the central bank in Europe. So they are buying the bonds all the time from VW, which allows VW to refinance their debt. But back to your question, first of all, I don't think that VW Group will go bankrupt. They may, but they're going to be bailed out for sure, and it will be done in a way that the word bailout will not appear in the news. So it will be done in a smart way so that there not a lot of negativity is going out. To be honest, right now, already the German taxpayer is paying big time for VW just to stay alive, because margins are low. Profits have been artificially high, which doesn't reflect the business situation the company is in. They have all these future investments in terms of battery technology. Ask yourself why Oliver Blume has canceled the dedicated Trinity factory in Wolfsburg. They're trying. Why are they closing the Dresden facility, which was a lighthouse project? A lot of customers and Germans really been extremely responsive about. There's a reason behind that. It's they know when they fire 270 people in a BEV factory in Zwickau that this will bring bad and negative headlines. They are not doing this because they want, but they must. They are forced to. And I think the next, let's say, 2 years going to be extremely hard for VW Group. I believe the company is going to shrink. They are going to be funded through the government and the central bank in Europe because they are too big to fail. And we are going to see a lot of changes. I could also imagine that some brands are kind of sold or spinned off or merged. We've already seen this actually with Seat and in Spain, merging together to one group now. So maybe we see another IPO with Porsche. So the next chunk of money from the market just to finance the running business. So they're going to try to put lipstick on the pig and may somehow appear, look, everything is fine. And just the people who understand a little bit more about the industry and dig a little bit deeper understand all the problems underneath. And one of the biggest problems, not a lot of people are talking about it, is that the larger part of the value creation is going abroad. So the German automakers are kind of going back to bend the metal to build a chassis, and that's kind of it. So the software is developed somewhere else, the data is collected somewhere else. The value creation is very much limited. We're still going to see German cars with the known badges on it, with nice interior, but the biggest portion of the profit will go to supplier bases. You see this with Audi and SAIC or VW and XPeng, which is a perfect example of outsourcing the hard stuff, to someone else who obviously knows how this works.
And it makes them so dependable on and that it's so dangerous what they are doing there. Because in the short term it looks good, but it's not a good plan to outsource your best knowledge, or you could say that. The German OEMs have all their patents lays in the internal combustion engine. And they are like, that's why they can't give it up. They don't want to give it up, because all the development is inside of that. And now everybody can make an EV. Everybody and their mom can make an EV. It seems like, even like it's just a skateboard with software, more or less. I mean, it's like oversimplified, of course, but yeah, if you have access to battery production, then you have access to EV production. It's pretty close together, actually. And if you can produce batteries and everything, it's a totally different game. And that's why they try to reach out to those brands in China to help them. I can't fathom why no German car manufacturer wants to partner with Tesla in any way or reach out to them. I think the connection with VW and Elon Musk was a great start there. I mean, they could have at least have contact and figure stuff out, maybe, but they're of course too proud to do that. But now the Chinese manufacturers are good, but this is a false promise, because now we've seen in the IAA, it was a slap in the face into the Germans, and every politician, many people went there, high profile people from Germany went there, who I assume don't even use the internet, because this could explain why their knowledge is so bad about all this stuff. And now they go to the fair and suddenly realize, wait a second, BYD, what is that? And why is their stand so big? And why is it bigger than VW? That's so embarrassing for Germany. And now they start to realize, and now they kind of go to the front, or they go like drive in front and drive to the back at the same time, because now they have a problem. They rely on the Chinese to produce battery electric vehicles, but now they have them as competition as well in their home turf. And remember, Mercedes is more and more partnering with the Chinese manufacturer Geely, actually, because they did a great job with Polestar. And this is a luxury EV that works, that has a great software, that kind of is in the exact same niche as Mercedes. And now they go to the competition and ask them to build their EVs. They did that with the Smart One already. And now they want to go even further that route, which is just a sign that they can't build compelling EVs, even if it is actually Mercedes, because they did kind of an okay job before with the EQS from the range perspective and everything. Don't talk about here efficiency, but still it's okay what they did. But now, yeah, that's, for me, that should shouts defeat in like, it's alarming really much. I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, it's many have talked about, like, maybe the Chinese people will become so big that they can buy, like Geely could buy Mercedes and bail them out at some point. But anyway, do you think that there is a threat from when we see that Zwickau is shutting, the Dresden factory is shutting down, and Zwickau is cutting a workforce and so on? But we also see like the ID3 costs like almost half in China as it does in Europe. Do you think there is a chance or a threat to the German auto industry that they will simply push the manufacturing all the way out to China, and the ID3 will only be produced in China, and then they import them to Europe because they are much more cheap to produce in China? Or is that not going to happen?
It's definitely happening. I mean, you can read this from the CEOs here, from the German automakers, who are asking for incentives and for that what they call political framework in order to be able to continue production in Europe. And so there's a lot of production still going to China and other countries. We will feel this here, Jan, in Germany in particular, that more and more jobs are lost in that industry. And back to your point you made before, let's face it, German automakers lost China. So that's total defeat, right? So even if you add the ICE vehicles in China, VW has been falling, I think, on rank number 2, and they will fall further down because it doesn't make sense in China to buy anything else than a BEV, and that's more and more true in other countries too. I don't even see German automakers having a big market share in North America because there's just a lot of competition out there who's playing in their field. And this is not just only Tesla. I mean, just look at the registration numbers from California, which is ridiculous. I think every second BEV is a Tesla, if I'm not mistaken. Totally crazy. I mean, how to compete in this market? Yeah. And they are going there with the ID4 in Chattanooga, which is still a good looking car, I think, for a lot of people attractive. But again, if you drive a Tesla, if you drive a Model Y and compare it with a, with an ID4, or you drive the new Model 3 and compare it with an ID4, there's just no debate here anymore. What is better, better value for money. So what is left? China is gone. North America is kind of gone and shrinking. So all what they have is Europe, and they're trying to fight hard. So VW has been selling in Germany more battery electric vehicles than Tesla in this year. So at least that is still working, but they are fighting, and I don't see this going to stay that long. And the best-selling vehicle, obviously, no surprise, is a Model Y in Germany this year. So by far, actually. So I don't have a lot of positive to say here. I mean, if you read the media, you get a sense that Germany seems to be the only country in Europe, maybe globally, that is still making the claim that ICE vehicles are still needed, which is hard to believe. But this is really the case a lot of people are making. And, they are going to wake up. I mean, already now we know that the TCU is much better with the BEV. You have much more luxury. You have more comfortable. It's more comfortable. It's safer. You just pay less. Everything is better in the battery electric vehicle. Not all people know this yet, but they are going to learn it over time. There's no question. So to make this claim is a desperate move in trying to sell at least a few ICE vehicles in Europe and in Germany. And this is why they are doing that. What they seem not to understand is that by doing that, they are undermining their own position in terms of their own battery electric vehicles. So they're actually asking their customers to go to the competition to buy a battery electric vehicle. Because think about it. You want to buy a BMW, for instance, and then you hear from the CEO saying, well, ICE vehicles are still going to be great, and there's be a long future for them. And by the way, with e-fuels, you can drive them very long in the future, and it's a fantastic car. And and then they say, we also have battery electric vehicles, by the way, which are great cars, much better than the competition. So what impression do you get as a customer? I would be confused. I would be confused about what they tell me. And usually I don't buy anything from someone I consider as being confused. So regardless what I think about the product.
And now you add, does this have a frunk? No, it actually doesn't, because that's the same chassis we use for the internal combustion engine cars. That's why we need the space to put an engine inside of that as well, side by side. Yeah. And don't listen to the news that in 2035 you can't register internal combustion engine car anymore by law. It's pretty dire. I mean, of course, they're gonna lobby against that as far as they can. They're gonna say that e-fuels are safe and everything and stuff like this. I think they're gonna go the hybrid and e-fuel route there. But
they're making the claim seriously, Lars, that the regulation for the European Union will not stay. The German automakers makes a claim this is going to change. This will not happen. And if I listen to that, I just ask myself, what's happening here? And then on top of that, we haven't even talked about hydrogen, right? In Denmark, they just closed all the hydrogen fueling stations entirely. And in Germany, they're claiming hydrogen is going to be the future for cars. So regardless what you think, if you believe this is going to happen or not, it's a total confusing message for consumers. Very confusing. And I think that it's fair to say that most car buyers in the market just don't know anything about the technology, or not a lot. They have heard a little bit here or there, but they just And then they get these confusing messages from this legacy automakers, and we could, broaden this to the European, to Renault, to Stellantis, to GM, to even to Ford. You get these confusing messages. You need to ask yourself if you want that. I personally would rather than go for a company that's only producing ICE vehicles, which not sure if this still exists. I don't think so. Or a pure BEV player, right? Just to be on the safe side, one of the two. And so at the end of the day, you end up with Tesla or with Rivian or with BYD, although that's also an ICE producer, to be fair. And once you experience the software in these cars, you are not going back. You are not going back. I mean, VW, there's a huge group of customers from VW going over to Tesla, which is not a surprise because you have this agile, direct drive, sportive feeling in these cars, a lot of tech. So no surprise, BMW drivers test out Teslas. And I
The
think
ultimate driving machine. Yeah.
yeah, and I
Exactly.
think it's 97%, if I'm not mistaken, that are not going back once they experience the Tesla, which is an amazing number. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how to survive as a legacy automaker with such a message? I just don't get it.
Yeah, because BMW is like, they're talking about BEVs and ICE vehicles is still important, and they are saying the next hip thing is going to be hydrogen. And like you said, in my country, we are closing down all the hydrogen stations because it just doesn't make sense. Because we have 10 private person that have an hydrogen car. That's it. 10 private persons. That's it. So the hydrogen car, in my opinion, definitely in my country, is completely and utterly dead. But BMW, like you say, they are even twice as confusing as many of the other legacy automakers because they are also betting on hydrogen. I don't believe Volkswagen is, or at least Herbert Diess without saying that. Just look at the science, and we have this nice little chart from Volkswagen Group that's showing the efficiency of ICE vehicles, battery electric vehicles, and hydrogen, and so on. So I think BMW is, because they look great right now, as you say. Their financials looks kind of great, but it's probably, like you say, Alex, a pig with lipstick on. Because if there is some confusing customers, it must be the BMW, because there's just all over the place when it comes to powertrains, in my opinion.
So in that sense, Mercedes-Benz has a better strategy in just claiming we go 100% electric. That's it. Period. And VW is still claiming, e-fuels are not the worst. So yes, we're going to 100% electric one day in the future, but there are a lot of countries where this is not the best solution. So we are still going to continue to produce ICE vehicles. And by the way, e-fuels are very important. Again, totally confusing message for customers.
Yeah. And also wanted to add something here. I want to share. Maybe you can set it free down below. That's the chart of the top-selling electric vehicles in Europe, which just released like a few days ago from July 2023. And yeah, ID.4 kind of recovered a bit. It was lower before, and but if you really look at it, yeah, of course, the Tesla Model Y is still up there. The Model 3 is over there, and it's going to be more because now they have the refresh. And I'm sure I was even right around the corner pulling the trigger on the Model 3 Highland. Pretty dangerous stuff there, but I decided to buy Tesla stock instead per month. It's much more sensible for me right now. So still, no financial advice, by the way. And if you look at the numbers, it's interesting. Of course, Skoda and VW here are from the group. This means in total they might have even more sales, but it's an overall trend still. Model Y is the most attractive EV still, and Model 3 is catching up the ranks, and the MG4, like you said, is also reported a lot about this car. It's coming. The Chinese manufacturers are coming, and Polestar is also in a good position there, even in front of the EQA from Mercedes, the Polestar 2. And I just wanted to share that because I think it's important to see that. What's happening in Europe.
Yeah, definitely. And if you had a chance to tell the German automakers what they should change, because it does sound pretty dooming here with Volkswagen and the German automakers with all the things you have been talking about here. So, if you were in the position of Oliver Bloom or any of the legacy German automakers CEO, what strategic move would you say? What can they do to turn around this sinking ship?
Maybe I can jump in here for 1 second because I think Alex has also a good answer to that. But I think we will have the same answer here. They should have, and I repeat, should have made a startup out of VW, like Alex also told years ago, or maybe even a decade ago. They should break out a startup with just a focus on battery electric vehicle platform, with the new branding or anything, so we don't feather up the established customer base. Because if you look at the numbers and look at the successful EV companies, that are all the startups actually that are the most innovative in comparison to Tesla as well. Like Tesla is in the front, of course, but yeah, if you look at it that way, and in my opinion, that should have been done 5 years ago, or let's say 4 years ago, like in a small margin. But yeah, I see that the train already, we can watch this car crash in front of us just, and I don't know. I don't see them turning around. I don't know how. I don't see it. I don't see it, sadly. Because I'm
Yes,
rooting also for them. But I can't. It's what's happening. It's difficult.
I agree. So yeah, I've been repeating myself over the years here. I've been writing about it early on that I see I mean, I was picturing in my imagination a VW group that is successfully transforming into a BEV company. Seriously, trying to, playbook what needs to be done, how will this work, financing, what kind of team, how should they transform. And each simulation I did in my brain led to a situation where the company was only 30% of what it's been before, and a situation where between 60 and 80% of the profit is being going outside of the group to China and to other suppliers, like we see it now with XPeng and Sykes. They are not doing this for free, you know. Not to mention there are two weak partners partnering too, but that's another story to be told. So I've been seriously trying to find a way for VW to get out of that, and by keeping the organization and trying from internally to transform it, which is the wish of the German population, German citizens. It's also the wish of the employees. It's also the wish of the stakeholders, and in particular the wish of the politicians. Let's not forget that 20.6% of the VW Group shares are owned by Saxony, by the state Saxony in Germany. So there are a lot of politicians there who interfere. In other words, there's actually nobody who is agreeing to you, Jan, with what you just lined out. Not a single group of people, and I could include the unions here, not one group of influential people who say, let's go a different direction. By not, and I mean, convince me. I'm happy to have that conversation here or in the future. I don't know how this tanker could be transformed from inside out without, blood draining down the road. And maybe that's the way to do it. You just fire all on everybody and just try to wake everybody up. But this is not German culture. They won't do that. They will always try to keep it politically and culturally correct, which is why actually they're also happy with Oliver Blume, because he's doing what he's supposed to do, which is actually nothing. So
Yeah.
I still believe the only way is really, and even today they have a chance to do that, Jan. I think it's not too late. If they just take 10 billion, which is not a lot of money for VW, and found a new startup for battery electric vehicles, which is independent from VW. There's no reporting line to the management of VW, which has a right to use all the resources VW can use, including the smartest people in the company, which they can attract to come over. They can use the extremely strong sourcing and purchasing department from VW to get low prices, for instance, for batteries, to get going. And they can even do this, I believe, with the existing development of battery electric vehicles within the VW group. So, like Polestar, building a new organization outside, equipping them with everything they want, hire the smartest people, and just let them grow and let's see what's happening. Maybe with a new brand, totally new brand. I think that's a better idea than using these old brands, because of the MEB platform, all the brands from VW in terms of battery electric vehicles are burnt now. They have a bad negative image.
Yeah.
So it's just not everybody saying ID3, okay, well, not the car I want to have. And this is not going to change. So what VW wanted to do is this fantastic VW name, 90-year-olds. It's been once the biggest auto company in the world, fantastic positive image. They want to transform that image to battery electric vehicles. They failed totally. And they don't acknowledge that, but they failed. And by failing, they just don't have a standing anymore with BEVs within the VW group. They just don't. Customers who are a little bit educated won't take a BEV from VW group if they want to have a good car. And therefore, I think they should really start with a new brand. I believe it's not too late, but I also believe this is not going to happen. They're not going to do that for very German reasons.
And I think also what just one sentence here. I think for the viewer maybe to understand, Alex and I are pretty dark-minded in that sense. We're not very positive, and we're very almost aggressive at sometimes when we discuss these things. It's because we are living in those conditions. We are witnessing those things left and right in different segments in Germany. It's almost part of the German culture to do things like this, and it's so frustrating to witness. And the only thing we can do is actually complain, more or less, and because we don't really have influence, of course, on those. We can just analyze it and just maybe wake the public up a little bit. Hello, please, everybody, look at this, please. I also have huge discussions with people who are working also in the industry of my friends. They are more on the design side of the things. One of my friends is working at Mercedes in the design. He designs those interfaces. We are seeing those animations that Mercedes is doing, and yeah, it's at least we are in a discussion that a domino could fall left and right, maybe, but it's frustrating to witness. But I'm really rooting for that, because I don't want to shoot myself in my own leg. I'm living here in Germany. That's why I want the German car companies to succeed. I want them to catch up to Tesla at least, or maybe be near Tesla at least. But it isn't that way. And for me as a German, it's such a breath of fresh air to witness Tesla and see what they are doing, because you see a successful company. Oh, that's the way how you do it. And also from the structure and the way they are developing their products, it's much more like we do it in the software or in the design space where I'm from. So the design thinking ideation methods and the agile methodologies that they use are still not really implemented in the German companies. And I'm talking about a broad variety of German companies, not just the car industry. We see that left and right, that we are too stubborn, too focused on the product itself, not on the customer actually. And that's, I mean, in the software space, you cannot have this. It's a bad product if you put something out there. And I think the Germans should learn from the software development much more and act like a software company, actually, like a software startup. That would be my advice to them. Yeah.
Yeah, so it looks a little dark, but there was one advice for the legacy automakers that you need to spin off and do what some of the other guys have done so far. So hopefully they will realize this before it's too late, because as Nokia said, the CEO said when they filed for bankruptcy, we did nothing wrong, but we lost anyway. And and that was the problem. They did nothing. They didn't want to change. They stayed the same road and did the same thing, just tried to do it even better. And it didn't work very well. So thank you so much, guys. It has been absolutely pleasure having you on the show. I have learned a lot also about Germany and and how it all works down there, just south of me, because it's probably also been one of the most videos with the biggest accents when it comes to English. Two Germans and a Dane sitting here trying to to discuss the car industry. But I hope everybody enjoyed the show, and I will leave links down below to TeslaFix, his YouTube channel, and his Twitter account, of course, and also Alex, you also have a YouTube channel. I have seen some of you.
Yeah, that's true. But I don't do a lot of videos lately, because a lot of time is consumed on X. I also have a Patreon account. You're probably too young. I'm not sure.
Not right now, but I recommend Alex's Patreon account as a. If you want to follow me, just follow Alex. He has great infos in this Patreon. And but I have a premium subscription. You can subscribe to my channel for $4. So I do this over YouTube, but just saying,
Yeah, I will leave links to everything down below. But thank you so much, guys, for taking the time to talk with me today. And please keep up the great work you both are doing. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Lars.
Bye.
Pleasure.
Bye.
Thank you.